Wholeness and welcome. This is Josh Dippold here with you for a Thought Process Thursday. I'm titling this Weird in a Weird Way. The description I have for this is let's openly explore some thought processes on weirdness in order to unwind and aid healing. What is weird and what isn't? Why do some insist on weirdness while others shun it at all costs? What are the pros and cons of weirdness? What does this have to do with mindfulness, meditation, and wellness? What is the impact of this on my life? Well, welcome. Before I get started here, just talk about my environment here. I've moved to a small island on Denmark, and talk about weird, there's the ocean, and there's a lighthouse over here, but I figured I didn't want to be too much in public doing this when there's other people, yada yada. So I just stepped away from that in a little wooded area here, perhaps some other time in the background. Now, weird. Okay, where do we start here? I just saw, I think on Danish radio podcast I listen to every once in a while, that this has now been politicized. So I don't want to get into politics, but I think this has happened in the time that I've schedule this event, and now it's become political, where one guy has been talking about a running mate has been calling other people weird and other people defending that they're not weird. So I think the first thing to do here is, what is weird anyway? What does that even mean? In my experience, this just means kind of anything we're not comfortable with, right? Somebody is different than we are. We have an idea about something. We have ideas and perceptions about things, and they just don't line up with the way we want things to be, with expectations. So we call it weird. I mean, what would you guys call weird? Not specific examples, although you can give those too. But what does that even mean? When is something normal and is weird? So I don't even know what normal is, right? I don't even know how that works. Because this is all relative and comparative, I think. So we look at people like our communities like Austin, right? Austin, Texas, keep Austin weird. And then you have very conformist cultures where just a slight deviation from sticking out is going to be considered weird or not acceptable. Then we have this notion of, well, I'll just from personal experience, in my 20s, I had this thing where I felt I wanted to do very unique things, and one of the ways I identified myself and guided myself, which is so foreign what's going on today, it seems, liked very interesting music, avant-garde music, experimental music. Like I'd get this magazine from the UK called anyway, I won't go into that because might be considered promotion, but it's so obscure. Anyway, that I would look this up, and I would download all this bizarre music that nobody's ever heard of, right? And that was who I was. I was considered special. But what this can do too is lead to like notions of entitlement. When I'm projecting out a thing that I want to be special, and if people don't recognize that in my uniqueness, my brilliance, which in a way maybe it was, but then I feel it can kind of cross over into entitlement. Like, okay, they're not respecting me. I'm going to get what I feel I deserve one way or the other because of this and that. So that's kind of a downside to that. Um, Weird, though, can also be showcase diversity, I think, in our experience as well. It can add color and richness and variation and spice. It can break things out of conformity and molds. People that are too in their comfort zone and too in boxes, I think, could benefit from looking into something that might be a little bit different. I feel this weirdness tests our comfort zones. I was talking to a friend's daughter the other day when I was visiting, and it was almost like she was cringing for someone else because they weren't recognizing how they were in class. They would respond and act differently than the other classmates. And it was almost like she was cringing for her. It's a whole nother thing in school when kids get bullied, maybe for being weird. Um, I happened to be the opposite, where I kind of sought out the weirdos in high school, where that was like a sense of belonging, those kind of outcasts who didn't fit in, and almost an outcast amongst outcasts. So, why is this important? Why do we need to look at this topic, other than now it's been politicized, right? Um, I think I mentioned some of these ideas of why it might be something to look at. But this notion of entitlement with weirdness, I think, is something, it's one of our core wounds. Um, what does it have to do with mindfulness? I think with mindfulness, you know, being mindful that something might stick out or might be out of the ordinary from what we're used to, and what are our habitual patterns around something that we see and we consider weird. I think another way to look at this too is maybe something just isn't for me. It doesn't mean that I have to judge it as weird or not judge it as weird. When we see something that we kind of maybe not resonate with, maybe we maybe that kind of automatic judgment or response or labeling is, as long as we don't derive satisfaction from putting someone down, then maybe it's just like this recognition that, okay, that type of behavior, that type of thing just isn't for me right now. It doesn't mean that it's wrong or that I have to be an advocate for it, or do the opposite, like shun it, make fun of it, call it out. I can just see that and say, okay, I see that. I honor and respect the divinity, Buddha nature in that, but it's just not for me right now. Um, I think another way is to, how does this land in my heart? How does this resonate? Whatever I'm perceiving as weird or unique or out of the ordinary, is it just a habitual response of the heart, a habitual reaction of the heart? Or what does the heart do? What do we feel like? What are the emotions when the mind or whatever labels something as weird? Now, I'm not saying um, you know we have to do this in depth all the time. One of the things, though, that I think a lot of people use weird as a pejorative is because it's something that sticks out in that it's unknown. So there's a huge potential danger in being unknown. And that is danger. It can be perceived as dangerous and scary if one doesn't really understand what it is. So this is the way I look at. I wonder. Let's just put it this way as a question. I wonder if what sometimes is being interpreted as racism is just like a xenophobia, this fear of what newness or foreignness, not understanding things. So, like, if we don't have a reference point for something, it's going to be potentially scary, unrecognizable. We don't know what to do with it, right? We don't know anything about it. So um, I guess then we default to our kind of disposition to, oh, we want to open and find out more about it, or do we want to draw back and protect ourselves? And I don't know what this is, so now I'm scared. I'm not saying either way is right or wrong. I'm just saying be the mindfulness we bring to something we don't understand and don't see. How is the heart moved by that? How is the heart touched? And what is the wise way to go forward with something that we see as foreign and unrecognizable and we don't know? What is the best approach? And it's not a one size fits all too, right? There can be different flavors of newness, right? So this is where I feel like kind of our intuition can really be our guide, right? We can sense something that's maybe different, maybe just kind of colorful and um, fun, or maybe like artistic. But other things, they might stick out and they might be like, okay, well, this being seems to be going through a hard time right now. Seems to be a little bit dark. It's standing out. So, maybe I need to not engage or draw back, obviously. So, these are things that I think are more common sense, and we just don't really flesh out a lot. Then there's some things I think where we're just more comfortable being how we are, and we don't think twice about. And I'm using this royal we, right? Uh, I would just say I like. It's just easier to go on about my day if I don't even think about it twice, or consider it, or feel into it, or anything like that. It's just easier to operate on habitual autopilot, because I've already got so much other stuff to do, right? I don't need to take on another thing to explore or contemplate or reflect on. And that's okay too. We can cut ourselves some slack, and I think and feel we will kind of get those lessons we need and explorations we need when we need them. Hannah says, hello, good afternoon, happy to be here. Well, I'm happy and glad to hear, Hannah. Does anybody want to say anything about being weird? I mean, is it weird that I'm in the woods by a lighthouse, by the ocean, showing this instead of showing the ocean and the lighthouse? Or would it be weird if I'm doing this live event and some families and people are coming up there being weird in a weird way? Weird in a weird way. A political topic, apparently, and on game, almost anything. It's seems to be there designed to trigger people emotionally, be on board or without it. So again, still steer clear of that. We've got crows uh, for now, getting close to 15 minutes anyway. I would just ask you guys to contemplate um, why do things, or how do things labeled weird and how to get acceptable? How many people are the people in power? How much influence do they have over labeling trends as weird and normality? Also, the time period we live in, right? We just look back a few decades and what was considered normal back then. If you were doing certain things like that, it would be weird. And how much does culture affect this? Location on Earth, and our expectations and our habits and habit patterns and our likes and dislikes, right? And of course, our influences and friends. How does this color normality and weirdness? And what do we do about it? How do we respond to this? How do we treat ourselves and treat other people when we're struck with the weirdness? I think Hunter Thompson, he's gone now. He said, when the going gets weird, the weird turn pro. And it's, yeah, interesting saying. So may you all find the most optimal perceptions, views, speech, and behavior around normality and weirdness. May all beings everywhere realize awakening and be free.